A plane carrying over 200 people vanishes from radar. No distress call, no wreckage, no explanation. It simply stops existing. How does a machine the size of a building disappear from a planet covered in satellites, radar stations, and tracking systems? How do you lose something that large in a world where you can zoom into a parking lot from space? That question turned into one of the most expensive, most advanced, most frustrating searches in aviation history. And the deeper investigators went, the less sense it made. The flight took off normally, routine checks, routine weather, routine crew. Then, at a certain point, the transponder, the device that tells the world exactly where a plane is, went silent. Not damaged, not malfunctioning, silent, in a way that suggested it had been deliberately turned off. That single detail changed everything.
Because a mechanical failure doesn't also turn off communication systems one by one, in sequence, like someone flipping switches on a checklist. So investigators asked a question no one wanted to say out loud. Was this an accident, or was this intentional? Here's where the science gets strange. Radar operators later noticed something they almost missed. After the transponder went dark, a blip matching the aircraft's size kept appearing on military radar, flying in a completely different direction than its scheduled route. Turning, climbing, descending, behaving like an aircraft under active control, not one falling apart. That's when everything changed for investigators. This wasn't looking like an accident anymore. This was looking like a decision. But then scientists discovered something unexpected. Automated satellite systems on board the plane continued sending faint automatic signals for hours after the aircraft supposedly disappeared. Not messages, not location data, just handshake pings, like a phone quietly checking for signal in the dark. Engineers used those faint pings, combined with orbital mechanics and Doppler shift calculations, to estimate a possible flight path stretching thousands of miles. A path that ended, according to the mathematics, somewhere in one of the most remote stretches of ocean on Earth. Let that sink in. A plane can vanish from human radar entirely and still leave behind a mathematical fingerprint written in radio waves. But the real mystery isn't the flight path. It's what happens to the human mind in the middle of a catastrophe like this. Psychologists studying high-stakes cockpit behavior have found something unsettling. Under extreme stress, trained pilots don't always panic the way people assume. Experienced pilots facing sudden crisis often shift into a state of hyper-focused tunnel vision, capable of complex, deliberate actions, while emotionally disconnecting from the severity of the situation. In other words, a mind under pressure can become eerily calm and precise even while making catastrophic choices. That single finding reframes everything, because it means a person could execute complicated actions, rerouting, disabling systems, changing altitude, while barely processing the enormity of what they were doing.
So now you have a possible answer, but it creates 10 new questions. Why would anyone do this? Why leave no message, no explanation, no demand? If this was intentional, why choose the most remote, hardest to find stretch of ocean on the planet? And if it wasn't intentional, what kind of catastrophic event disables communication systems in sequence, keeps the aircraft flying under control for hours, and still leaves searchers with almost nothing to find? Here's what makes this case unlike any other disappearance in history. Search teams scanned an area of ocean larger than some countries. They used sonar capable of mapping the seafloor in stunning detail. They found shipwrecks nobody knew existed, underwater mountains, lost history sitting untouched for centuries. They found almost everything except the one thing they were looking for. Barnacle growth on those fragments gave scientists clues about ocean drift patterns, confirming the plane likely entered the water far from where anyone was searching. But confirming where it entered the ocean is very different from knowing why it got there. That's the unbearable part of this mystery. Science can tell you where, it struggles to tell you why. And that gap between data and motive is where the human mind starts filling in the blanks. Theories multiply, some scientific, some absurd, because uncertainty is one of the most psychologically unbearable states a person can experience.
Studies on ambiguity intolerance show that humans will often accept a disturbing explanation over no explanation at all, simply because the brain craves closure more than it craves comfort. Maybe that's the real reason this case still haunts people. Not because a plane disappeared, but because it exposed how thin the illusion of control really is. We build machines that talk to satellites in orbit. We track flights in real time from our phones. And still, in a matter of hours, more than 200 people vanished from a fully monitored world, and the most advanced tracking technology on Earth could only calculate where they might be, not where they were. So here's the question worth sitting with. We assume that in a world this connected, nothing can truly disappear. But maybe disappearing was never about technology at all. Maybe some mysteries aren't hidden by the ocean. Maybe they're hidden by the limits of how much certainty the human mind is even built to survive without.